Hi there, this is Dylis Guyan, and welcome to the Inspired Selling Podcast, the place where coaches, consultants, trainers, and service-based experts who sell to bigger businesses discover how to attract, convert, and retain more of their ideal clients on a consistent basis. And again, I have a wonderful guest for you today, and that is Marcus Cauchi. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about Marcus. He started sales in 1987, so a veteran, much like myself. He is a licensed Sandler trainer and co-author of Making Channel Sales Work. He's served clients across 450 segments of the market, helping them find, win, protect, and grow sales with triple-digit growth rates, which is phenomenal results. He's a leading expert in channel sales development, specializing in helping 3 to 50 million turnover technology scale-ups who want to scale up fast without losing control. He developed the Channel Sales Excellence Program to help vendors build a special forces unit of highly profitable, loyal partners. And he provides CEOs and channel chiefs with the framework, strategy, and tools to build, develop, and sustain productive, manually beneficial partnerships. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So welcome, Marcus. I'm thrilled to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Dylis.
You're welcome. So before we get into things, just share your backstory and give us a synopsis of how you got to where you are today.
Did a degree in Middle Eastern Studies, which was essentially 4 years of watching spaghetti hoops run across a page in a slightly hungover haze. Realized that I was never going to work in the Middle East, given that I could probably speak about 5 minutes of Arabic and 3 minutes of Farsi. Ended up getting into sales quite soon after university. Started out in media sales, then got into recruitment, did that for 10 years, then got headhunted by an old client to set up the first practice specializing in recruiting for the single currency conversion. So that was a good 20 plus years ago. And I've always tended to be able to connect the unconnected. Spotted the opportunity. I was the first recruiter in Europe to specialize in that, which is slightly ironic given where we are with Brexit. I then got into selling software because my old CFO headhunted me, and then did that for a while, got into selling consultancy. 9/11 happened, and had a £3 million pipeline that disappeared overnight. And then decided to set up on my own because I'd just about had enough. And I had a telemarketing business, and on my first day with my first client, they said to me, Marcus, we've just been on this great training program. Have a listen to these audio CDs and read this book. And by that point, I'd listened to probably 300 books on sales or read them. And they were all telling me stuff that was out of date when Queen Victoria was a girl. And so I shoved them in my inbox for 5 months, and one day took them home. And in 15 minutes, I had 10 road to Damascus moments. So it was like being whacked on the back of the head with a mallet 10 times in 15 minutes. And I realized then that this was what I wanted to do with my career, and never really looked back. So being with Sandler for 15 years, I've helped people sell everything from aircraft carriers to naked platters, matchmaking and female fantasy fulfillment coaching.
As you do.
Absolutely. Well, I had a former dominatrix as a client who ironically used to struggle using the concept of pain to sell. And she used to coach women on how to seduce their partners, and she'd sell fantasies. So they would be kidnapped by ex-SAS soldiers and then taken off to a Casbah in Marrakesh, and their boyfriend would have to spend 4 weeks on a treasure hunt trying to find them. So all sorts of weird and wacky stuff.
So we could say very varied.
Yeah, very varied. But the one common theme is what we actually teach is a human communications model, which is why it works across the board. And by and large, what I realized was that our biggest obstacle is the 6 inches between our ears and the noise that goes on in there. So that's my background.
Mm, excellent, excellent. I love it. I love your sense of humour too, Marcus.
Thank you. Can you tell my wife, please? Okay.
So, getting down to the mundane, but this doesn't need to be mundane because actually this is quite exciting, channel selling. So tell us, what is channel selling? Just give us a description of that so that our audience is very clear about what we're talking about.
Channel selling is selling through third parties. So it's value-added resellers, managed service providers, systems integrators, franchises, agents, distribution, anything like that. Referral partnerships are effectively a channel. Joint ventures are a channel. And selling through the channel is the hardest job there is in sales, bar none. Selling to enterprise, where you have a complex committee, is like herding cats. Essentially, this is like cat herding with both arms and legs tied up, because the only currency you have are influence and trust. You don't decide who does the selling, you don't compensate them, or you don't decide on their compensation, and you have no influence or no direct control. And you have to be able to achieve a result where the decimal point normally moves to the right, so you get a much bigger number without any of that direct control. And what I've learned over the last 32 years is that control is an illusion anyway. People do things for their reasons. And you have to, as a channel manager, as a partner manager, I'd rather call it partner management, to be honest, because partners consider themselves to be partners. Channel is a term vendors use to describe their distribution, and it treats them as a utility. But the definition of partnership is you help each other get better. And so the best channel managers are really more like a general manager than a sales manager. And the best channel chiefs are like a CEO rather than a VP of sales. And they have to be really in tune with their partners, why they're in business, what they're trying to achieve, and train them, help them, develop them. And if you're not putting money in the backs of your partners, they're going to go dark on you very quickly. So you have to be really attuned, and you have to stay in contact, and you also have to take ownership and responsibility for the results, despite the fact you're depending on other people to achieve them.
Yes, yeah, that is so critically important, because often, certainly with people I've worked with, you know, they're working in partnerships or distributors very often, and they just expect the distributors to do the work without any real great communication. There's no partnership there, and I'm glad you've used that word, because I think partnership is really critically important to the success of working in this way. And so the communication and having that objective and doing some training with your partners is so essential.
I think it goes deeper than that, if I'm being blunt. There's an awful lot of talk at the moment about the customer experience, but there's nothing spoken about the partner experience. And that's what we're all about. The partner experience needs to be a frictionless, seamless, delicious experience for the partner. From the moment you first engage them or engage with them through your outbound marketing or their inbound contact, through to their recruitment, their onboarding. Training needs to be something that happens repeatedly, religiously. Training needs to be something that happens repeatedly, religiously, consistently. And you are obligated, in my opinion, to train your partners how to sell your products and services. If you don't do that, then you're effectively leaving it to chance. And, you know, we teach a rule in Sandler: if your foot is hurting, you're probably standing on your own toe. If your partnership isn't working, the first place you look is the mirror. And if your partners aren't producing, that's your fault. Either you recruited the wrong partners, you failed to onboard them properly. Now, the onboarding process in our approach is 120 days minimum. And they need to know what they need to know, by when they need to know it, where they can find it, how to do it. And 75% of your time needs to be spent coaching and developing your partners, helping them to sell your products, your services, and creating an ecosystem where for every pound people spend on your products, there's £4, £5, £10 for your partners, because you depend on them. And if you don't understand the proverb that, you know, rising tide raises all boats, and you're selfish in your approach, and you see this a lot where CFOs say, well, why should I train my partners? If I train them to sell my stuff, they're just going to use that to sell my competitors' stuff. Well, shame on you, because if you don't behave like a partner and you treat them like a channel, then you're going to get reflected back what you project out. There's a guy called Kieran Cron who won the unlikely and slightly overblown sounding award of the world's best channel manager. I interviewed him for my podcast, and by God, he is the world's best channel manager. He is spectacular. He spends 75% of his time coaching individual salespeople. He spends time working in the business of his partners, helping them to achieve their goals and objectives. He doesn't sell selfishly. It's not about him. It's not about HubSpot, his company. It's about helping them achieve their goals. And Emerson's law of compensation states, to get more, give more. The more people you help to achieve their objectives, the more likely you are to achieve yours. And that's what channel sales is all about.
And really, there's a lot of similarities there between a leader and his salespeople. You know, the salesperson has to take on a leadership role and develop that partner as a leader would with a salesperson.
That's exactly why I said that a channel manager is closer in profile and makeup to a general manager, and a channel chief is closer to a chief executive than they are a VP of sales. You cannot be selfish in either of those roles. It's all about service. I remember years ago, one of my clients set up a speaking agency, and he had Dr. Stephen Covey come over. And I asked, I can't even remember the question, it was very mediocre, but Dr. Covey came back with an answer that was a watershed moment in my life. His response to my average question was, the greatest among us serve the most.
Yeah.
And partnership is about service. It's not about servitude, where someone else is on a pedestal. And that's what you see with a lot of large vendors or a lot of large distributors. There's a tendency to be them and us, you know, parent-child. This is about a partnership of equals. And one of the rules that we teach is, even on your worst day, you are never less than or more than your partner or your customers equal. And creating that parity is really important. It's about mutual respect, mutual trust, being fully authentic. None of this blaming, whining, moaning, grumbling, complaining, no persecuting, no rescuing, helping without boundaries or permission. It's all about operating from what we call the winner's triangle. You need to be vulnerable. You need to be willing to ask questions, knowing you may get answers that you don't want to hear. You need to take personal responsibility. You need to be assertive and agree what the lines of demarcation are between what's acceptable and not acceptable, and be ready to enter into constructive conflict. You need to be nurturing and empathic. And operating from there is one of the hardest things that any human being can do. And in a channel or a sales environment, if you don't operate from there, you are what we call I-centered, and that makes you selfish. You cannot be selfish in sales or in partner sales and expect to survive and thrive for long.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I know that you will see this so many times, and what I've absolutely loved is that if it's not working, look back on yourself. It's not
absolutely.
You know, you will get what you've given, as you so rightly said. So
absolutely.
How do so any of our audience that are listening and thinking, actually, I'm really interested in setting up a partnership, whether it be distributor, whether it be joint venture, whether it be a referral partner or something else, what are the steps? What should they be thinking about?
Well, the first thing is, ask yourself, are you a good partner? The partnership process should be a courtship. You know, before you put a ring on each other's fingers, make sure that you're compatible. So in the book, we have 14 important questions to ask before I say I do. So can you put your logo on their office door? If they're too small, or then they're not present enough, then you may have to question whether they're going to be a good partner. Does somebody beside the CEO make all the sales? Because if it's just the one person who owns the business, if they get hit by a bus, you don't really have a partnership. How do they get new business? A big alarm bell, and I know a lot of your listeners will be thinking, well, we get our business by referral. The referral pipeline will dry up unless you have a system for generating referrals deliberately, intentionally, systematically. What kind of reputation do they have? Is their culture more technical than sales? Are your business cultures compatible and complementary? How easy are they to do business with from the outset? Do they allow you to speak to their customers? Because very often partners are very protective because they don't trust their partners or their vendors. Are their salespeople asking good questions? If all they're doing is just lapping up product information, they're not going to make great salespeople. Do they welcome an onboarding process? If you want to build a special forces unit of effective, profitable partners where you have a mutually beneficial relationship instead of a land army of conscripts. I was talking to a chap at the Hypergrowth conference run by Drift a couple of weeks ago. They have 1,000 partners, of whom 200 have produced something in the last year. And of those 200, 20, i.e. 2%, produce 60% of their total turnover through their channel. So why would you not be spending your time developing those 20 and finding the B+ players from the 200 who are going to become A players?
Yeah.
And so you need to be aware that it's not about you, it's about them. Pay attention. Attention is a currency. You pay attention. And you have to build that emotional bank account by genuinely investing in them, being fully present, not worrying about your target, making sure that you're focusing on helping them achieve what they need. Make sure there is that compatibility. Make sure that before you start, you've identified what it's going to take for this partnership to be deemed successful, how each of you are going to measure the performance of the other, what the ground rules are, what the demarcation rules are, what's acceptable and not acceptable, creating a cadence of accountability, creating a culture where you regularly hold each other's feet to the fire, where you challenge each other, where constructive conflict from an adult to adult perspective is not only allowed but expected, and that you can disagree. But once you've agreed a course of action, you both commit completely. So one of the key skills is something called upfront contracting. This is where you agree at the beginning what will happen at the end. And the terms of your upfront contracts must be clear, specific, and certain. There must be mutual agreement, mutual acceptance, mutual understanding, mutual comfort, mutual commitment. No wishy-washy or ambiguous terms. Both sides know exactly what is expected of them. And you've agreed how to escalate. You're both willing to enforce the agreement to make sure that there is a genuine contract, and you're working towards common purpose. And this is so often missing. If you do that, you can actually do business on a handshake. I mean, for the last 15, 16 years, I've done business on a handshake in the main. My wife now is making me put written contracts together. But it's never really been needed. But she's detail orientated, and that's the reason we still have money, because otherwise I'd have spent it all. If you don't trust each other and you don't act with integrity, honor, then why are you in business at all? Sorry, that was a rant.
No, that's absolutely fine. But that's right. You've got to have this passion. If you're a salesperson, a sales leader, or you're working in a partnership with someone, you've got to have that passion and that commitment towards it. So from your experience then, Marcus, because I know you've worked with many people helping them to improve their channel selling or their partnership selling, what have you seen as being the biggest pitfalls? Even though they've got the structure and they've followed the rules, they've set the rules of engagement and they've committed to that partner, what do you see the areas that are in the main are the pitfalls?
Okay. Whether this is channel or direct sales, honestly, it doesn't make a whole heap of difference. The first thing is that 98% of management problems start with wrong hires. So start by recruiting the right partners in the first place. So be clear about what a good partner looks like and what good doesn't look like. And don't recruit the wrong type of partners. Next, establish clear rules of engagement and mean them. And again, this is where things go horribly wrong, because people pay lip service to it and they think it's about creating a contract that we can beat them over the head with. It's not. This is about understanding mutual purpose. Individuals
could you give us an example of that, Marcus?
Well, individuals with a purpose invariably
the one before, your rules of engagement. And
I'll come to that in a second.
Okay.
Where we have mutual purpose, where we are working towards a purpose, we find that people outperform people without one. So the first thing you have to do is understand why they're in business and what they're trying to achieve. And if you can't help them achieve that, then you as the channel or partner manager have an obligation to tell them we're the wrong people to work with. You need to establish the ground rules of communication. You need to establish a cadence of accountability. So how frequently will we meet? How are you going to hold us to account? What are you going to measure? How are you going to measure us? What is an acceptable level of performance as the vendor that you are going to hold us to in terms of knowledge transfer, training, support, communication, responsiveness, timeliness? Whatever those things are that matter to your partner, those are the things. Have you ever been to a hotel and when you leave, they give you that survey about customer satisfaction? They ask you about the quality of the shower cap, how easy the check-in and check-out was. When actually what you really care about is soundproofing, because you were on a corner room next to the lift by the ice machine overlooking the pool, and there was a stag party and you didn't get any sleep. You really want to talk about that, but they never tell you that you can talk about that, and they never give you feedback. And I think what's really important as partners, you need to communicate, you need to engage. Another element of the contract would be that you will have a regular pipeline review. You will do joint prospecting. You will give honest feedback about the quality of the leads that you are receiving or giving, that you will do pre-call planning. You will rehearse together. You will do a post-call debrief. You will refine your pre-call plan for the next conversation. You will do territory planning. All of these things need to be built into your agreement so that you can help each other be successful. But too often it's glossed over and they say, well, they ought to know this stuff. You know, they're grown-ups. It's like hiring salespeople and assuming that they can sell. 98% of salespeople are not salespeople. They are order takers. They're not salespeople. They don't know how to find someone who thinks they're well and engage in a dialogue with them to diagnose that they have a problem and help them understand that they need help. So as a result of that, what happens is there's mutual mystification. I think you're going to do one thing, you're doing something different. And when my expectations aren't met, then I blame you. Now, when you point the finger, there are three fingers pointing back. That's where the real responsibility lies. And so contracting is an essential part of the process. But our rule is ABC, always be contracting. Lots of little agreements all the way, and make sure that your relationship is still fit for purpose. Every quarter, make sure that you're sitting down and establishing, are we still in sync? If we're not, do we have to reset anything? Have we now come to the point where we need to go our separate ways? But if we've agreed up front who keeps the kids, then there's no conflict. So we need to make sure that we are always clear. We always know what's going to happen at the beginning, by the end. And this is where people are lazy, in my experience, and they're in a rush. I think one of the most useful rules that we teach is slow down to speed up. Don't rush. Make sure that things are right. Make sure that you're setting people up to succeed in the onboarding process. teach them how to sell your stuff. Don't just talk about the product. Make sure that their salespeople are asking the right kind of questions. Like, Dylis, that's great. Now, how do I use that to sell it? Why would anyone care? What problem is it going to resolve? Why would they care about that? Why does that matter? How does that affect them personally? Yeah. And so you as the partner manager need to help them be successful. You need to understand why they're in sales, why they're in this job, why the work that they do is important and meaningful, who they're doing it for. If you don't understand all of that, then frankly, you're lazy and you get what you tolerate. You deserve what you tolerate.
And for those who are recruiting partners who feel that, I've just forgotten what I was going to say there. I have to cut this out.
Happens to me all the time.
Yes, those who are nervous about training and coaching and working tightly and having, setting the rules of engagement and so on and so forth, they are worried about then the other companies, so other partners could benefit from that relationship so that they might be selling the services of another company. They are not going to lose you. They are going to value you so much because you really are that trusted, valued expert that's helping them in their business overall. They're not going to.
I'll give you a great example of this. I have a managed service provider and IT support company as a client. And I asked Graham, the VP of sales, have you ever had a partner who bothered to find out about you and what you were trying to achieve? And he said, yes, once. Are they still a partner? Yes. How long have they been a partner? 17 years. Yeah. What about the others? Oh, they come and go. If you invest in your partners, you will get reflected back what you project out. Now, some of them, they won't play nicely, in which case you made a judgment call and it was wrong. But you didn't establish those ground rules, those boundaries. And again, one thing I learned as a kid is bullies bully because they can, because no one sets a boundary. I used to get bullied at school. There was a guy called Tim who made my life a misery. When my fingers met behind his trachea, that was a boundary and it stopped. And the same thing with partnerships. It's not about using extreme violence. It's about establishing clear boundaries and expectations. Agree upfront what is acceptable, what isn't. And if something that isn't acceptable happens, then you already know it, you can recognize it, and then you can call them on it. And if they don't remedy it, pull the plug. Be a grown-up about it. You have no room for emotional attachment to the outcome. It's your job to do an excellent job at every stage of the relationship and the process, and to systematize. And this is another reason why things go wrong. They randomize the sales process. They wing it. Systems set you free. I spent the first 17 years of my career pushing back against systems and process with the misguided belief that it's nullified my creative juices. It doesn't. Having a framework and a structure and a system allows me to be as creative as I like within the framework, and constraint allows creative freedom. It's you have the tyranny of choice when you don't have constraint. And when you're operating in using one system, your partners are using another, there's confusion. The customer doesn't have that frictionless, seamless experience, and so they buy from someone else. Yes. The single biggest reasons why prospects object is because you take them there. It's something you've said or done or not said or done that has caused them concern, and they won't voice it because they want to be liked. They don't want to confront you. So why have you not set up the arrangement, the contract, so that they can confront you, so that you have an open, authentic, honest relationship based on trust, honor, and integrity?
Yeah. And this again is where setting the boundaries is so important, because you can set those boundaries to say, we're going to sit down and review and see what's worked well, what hasn't worked well, and what we're going to do differently.
I'll take issue with one word: set. It has to be mutually agreed. This is about partnership.
That's exactly what that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to listen to our language, because the language of control is not something that works in partnership. the language of alliance, the language of mutual self-interest, mutual benefit. And we talk about in our book a win-win-win or no deal outcome. It's got to be good for the partner. It's got to be good for the end customer. It's got to be good for you, or you pull the plug.
Yeah.
And that requires courage. And it also requires a good full pipeline, because where people go wrong, another reason why partnerships go wrong is scarcity mentality. If they haven't focused on the front end, filling the top of the funnel, then what will happen is they will go after everything and they need the business. If you want it but don't need it, then you give yourself the illusion of control, because you can walk away, and you can walk away from unreasonable requests and demands from the end customer. But if you want it but don't need it, you have that power. If you need it, then you're desperate. And no one, scared money doesn't sell. So if the partner is needy, desperate and skint, you're needy, desperate and skint, you project it out to the buyer and it sets their alarm bells going. And you've got 300 million years of evolutionary hardwiring you aren't going to beat, because their alarm bells would be kicking off saying, hang on a second, something's rotten here. Can't quite put my finger on it, but I'm not going to buy it. I'm going to give them a wishy-washy, think it over, send me a proposal, we'll be in touch. And that doesn't, because what you end up with there is a constipated pipeline. And you see that happening a lot, because the channel manager, the partner manager, is not clear enough about how to coach the partners to move stuff with sufficient velocity through the pipeline. They're not challenging them. And so very often what they're doing is they're allowing a happy ears to exist, where people are taking maybes instead of getting a clean no or launching the sale.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think we could talk for 3 weeks, Marcus, because we're so attuned in terms of, the making sure that you are taking on the right partners, this communication, the agreement between you when it's not going right, that you're challenging it and you're working and moving forward. And it's like having a little mini sales force if you've got some really great partners working for you and with you, and really having that tight relationship going forward.
What you're going to see increasingly is partner with partner happening, because the vendor in IT certainly is going to become more of a bit player, because they're just one part of a complex stack of within the solution, and the partners have the end user relationship. And what we're starting to see is channel chiefs occurring or being created within the partner network. So partners are working with partners. We're also seeing a lot of niching happening, and that will increase over the next few years, because you're no longer going to be the managed service provider in healthcare. You're going to be the managed service provider for care homes in Southeast London. And you're going to need to bring in partners who have specializations in security, in data analytics and so forth. And that's going to create a really interesting shift in the market. More has changed in the channel over the last 2 years than in the past 35 years. So it's going to be a really interesting time. And that partner experience is going to be critical to those who thrive.
Yes, indeed. So, Marcus, share with us how people can get in touch with you, share your book, and where they might be able to find that.
Thank you. So the book is called Making Channel Sales Work. If you want a copy on Kindle, it's on Amazon. If you want a paperback copy, then email my wife, Suzanne, at SCAUCHI@Sandler, SANDLER.com, with MCSW in the subject line, and she'll invoice you for £20 and send you the book. You can get me on LinkedIn. I'm prolific on there. I've got 415 articles. I've got about 400 videos on there, thousands of short posts. I have a YouTube channel and I have a podcast. So just Google me, Marcus Cauchi, or The Inquisitor.
Excellent. And is it Suzanne with a Z or with an S?
SUZANNE. Thank you for asking.
That's okay. You're welcome. Thank you so much, Marcus.
Pleasure.
You are an absolute leader, in trailblazer, actually, in terms of channel selling, partnership selling, and it's
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure to talk to you.
Still learning, but thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks so much. Bye for now.
Bye.
Well, that was certainly some insights into channel selling, partnership selling, and actually I prefer that term of partnership selling. So if you are in that situation right now, please take note of what Marcus has said, that this is about working together as a partnership, setting your objectives, setting your boundaries, training your people, reviewing, being accountable, and working with them in such a way that this really does provide benefits for both sides. So until the next time, if you feel you would like to work closer with me, come and join my Facebook group, Inspired Selling. And or if you would like a 30-minute strategy session with me to see where you are now, where you would like to be, and the challenges that might stop you getting there, please just drop me a line to Dylis@DylisGuyan.com. Until the next time, be great at selling and enjoy every moment. Bye for now.